and the guy behind about a dozen novels so far. And one of the reasons is that I've got more questions than answers,
Mm.
always have. And what I want to do on this series with my friends and colleagues is I want to explore some of those questions in themes like theology, cosmology, ethics, and everyday rants and raves, complaints, uh, uh, questions, curiosity, but also geopolitics, international finance, crime fiction. I don't know. I don't want to know. I don't know whether I want to go near true crime,
Wow.
but, but crime fiction certainly. And of course, we were running in the trailer my mystery series, Preacher Evan Wycliffe, and in that latest book, we've got topics of near-death experience and late-stage dementia, and even right to die laws, which seem to vary from state to state. But today, what I'd like to do is talk about, and they say every country music song, every popular song is about love. And I suppose every gospel song is about love of not necessarily romantic love. Our guest today is A.G. Billig, and our topic is why choose love? Now, that might seem an odd question. And the reason is, though, that I was familiar with her first book, I Choose Love. And I thought that was an interesting way to put it, uh, choosing love, um, as if one would choose something else. So that's something to explore with her. Um, I know also that the the whole idea of generosity and communication and compassion, all these things, we might say they come naturally in the human spirit, uh, but some would say no. Some would say no, the human spirit is prone to something entirely else, entirely different. So we want to know whether those are impulses, uh, like needing to feed ourselves, needing to breathe. Is that something that we absolutely need, that we crave in our lives? Or is it something that some people are lucky enough to experience and others might only dream about? We've certainly got a long tradition here of romance novels that is, and as an author, I follow the publishing industry and I look at the numbers, what is selling. And romance novels, those sell better than anything. Okay. And, back in the day, those used to be called bodice rippers, because they were, kind of soft, lusty books, you might say. I think in many ways that those tastes are changing as we evolve. I would say, as a society and as a community. Certainly, within the last few years, we've gone through the Me Too movement, and I was thinking the other day. I mean, I was watching, the TV trailer, and it was the latest James Bond movie, and I thought, why is he still a thing? That guy was not only was he a licensed assassin, but he also really, if you read those books closely, and certainly the movies implied it, James Bond was a rapist by today's standards and definition. And yet, those books have, and the books may have been faded, but the movies certainly one of the most popular movie franchises ever. Now, interesting spoiler alert: James Bond may have may have expired in the last episode if you haven't seen that one yet. So you wonder whether perhaps the filmmakers wondered whether that was a character that they could maintain into the future. But of course, we've got all kinds of comic book heroes these days, and they don't really act like human beings. Uh, they're not supposed to, I suppose. But I've often wondered also of the examples that we get in movies. Um, there is a school of thought, and it's actually in. Before AG joins us here, I wanted to reflect on. There's a school of thought. It's in literature. It's also in psychology. That says that it's storytelling, not just movies, but all kinds of storytelling, and also popular songs, that it's only by these means of social conditioning that we know romantic love at all. There are some people who will say that romantic love began in the Romantic period in the Renaissance in Italy. That's why it's called romantic. That seems difficult to imagine. Of course, certainly if you look at any historical movie today, no matter where it is set, among the ancient Egyptians or the Romans or the Knights of the Round Table, no matter what the historical period is, the movie's going to be full of modern versions of romantic love. Well, it's entirely possible, according to these psychologists and literary critics, that romantic love, the way that we think about it, didn't really exist or wasn't really acted out that way. And yet we know from Old Testament story, we've got David and Bathsheba, and that seems to be, if not love, lust, perhaps. Might we understand that story in a different way? It would be, an author once shared with me the viewpoint that all historical fiction is always about today. And the reason I think that was said is that the people who are writing it and the filmmakers who are making it are people who live today. We're looking at the past through the lens of today. And it's possible that we don't understand the past quite the same way. Now, our guest has popped in. AG, welcome to the show.
Hi, Gerald.
This is
Hi,
AG
everyone.
Billick, and she is a certified trainer and Reiki practitioner. I have known AG for some years. And I thought one of the things we might do, AG, is by way of self-introduction, if you would tell us, before I knew you, you were a media star somewhere else. Could you share that? Would you be willing to share that story with us?
Of course, you're too kind. Well,
nobody accuses me of that. So
I'm not accusing you. Actually, I'm acknowledging it. So yeah, I would never accuse you of that. So thank you for having me. And of course, our audience will notice my accent. So I have an accent because I'm originally from Romania, and in Romania, I became a radio host when I was 17 years old. I think I was one of the youngest radio hosts. And then I hosted a TV show for about 4 years. It was an entertainment show where I got a chance to interview some of the top Romanian artists, jazz musicians, rock musicians, pop musicians. It was really fun. It was a fun time, and
so
really
you understand garage bands, right?
well, yes, yes. And I love that, that was a while ago. And what I loved about that time and what I loved about the 90s and the 80s was that, since you brought that up, Gerald, garage band, every genre, every different style of music, they had their own sound. Like, I mean, rock music was rock music, pop was pop, reggae was reggae. Now everything is pretty much the same. It's like they have the same producer and they use the same sounds. So
Well,
that's a
I should explain that the AG, we've had discussions, ongoing discussions since I've known you, and I know you primarily as an author, and you also have my respect because you write in English as your second language. Well, I don't know if it's your second language, maybe it's your fifth language, but you write in English as capably, or perhaps more capably than many who speak as native speakers. So that fascinates me. But I know that one of the topics that we have touched on before is this idea that publishing and self-publishing, because I know that you're also an editor and a literary coach. We could talk about that as well if you want.
sure.
But we've talked about the idea that authors say that among our you're going to, like the garage band, you're going to have to play for anyone who will listen. And the joke, the way that I phrase it is,
Mhm.
honest with themselves, expects a limousine to pull up to the garage door and say, "Hey kid, would you like to play the Hollywood Bowl?" It just doesn't happen. So there's a matter of self-promotion. And by the way, also I'll mention, even though we have an evergreen show, this episode may run for, I don't know, until the tomorrow is the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books, and this is momentous. AG will be there signing her book on Saturday. What are your times?
Yeah, Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Uh,
11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the University of Southern California campus. There will be about 100,000 or more of our closest friends there at the time. It is a major show.
yeah,
And
it's,
significantly, this is the first big book show, maybe even in the country, after the COVID. What, I don't know that you could say COVID has been lifted, but for public meetings it has. So, but I got you sidetracked, AG,
you did. Let's go.
and well, you do that to me. It's just like my mind starts spinning, and that's why I like you as a guest and colleague, because I have people on this show who get us going and get us fired up in
Yeah.
directions that perhaps we might not necessarily be headed in. But I would like to get into this. Topic for today is, now, your first book, or at least your first book that I'm aware of in English, was called I Choose Love.
Actually,
And
yeah, this is the book, and actually, this is my second book in English. Something that's pretty unique about me, and that's pretty unique for a Romanian. My first book is Four Doors and Other Stories. That's a short story collection, and that book was published by MP Publishing from the UK while I was still living in Romania. So I went to the London Book Fair in 2012.
that's a bit I've been told.
Yeah, it's a big one, and I recommend it with all my heart to, especially to those of you um, aspire to be authors, it is the most amazing event. It's really inspiring. It's really, like uplifting. And now they included self-publishing. They have dedicated panels on self-publishing, and that's where I actually learned that self-publishing is such a great avenue for authors who know how to market their books and who are productive. And I said this story before, I told this story before, but I'll just keep it short. There was a panel with three people on it, and two of them were Mark Dawson. And those of you who enjoy reading thrillers might be familiar with his name. He's from the UK. And CJ Lyons, she writes thrillers as well. She's from the US. And that was 2015. So self-publishing wasn't that big as it is now. And Mark Dawson said, with only ebooks in the past 12 months, I made $500,000 in sales on Amazon, KDP, ebooks. But the guy had 20 books, I don't know, like over 10.
He writes
Yeah,
thrillers, and
yeah,
he has series. So
yeah, yeah. The
it's like eating peanuts
yeah,
for his fans. They can't
yeah.
stop reading them.
And I this is not a genre I'm interested in, so I didn't read his books. I assume that he's good. I don't think he's Hemingway necessarily, or Fitzgerald. I mean, I'm not sure his literary craft is at that level. I think he's a good writer, and I think there are many other good writers. So in my head, it was, if he can do it, then everybody else can do it, provided they are dedicated to it. And CJ Lyons, she didn't talk about her book sales, but too much, but they were great sales. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been, to the London Book Fair, because only people who can prove this amazing track record are invited to speak there. But she said, "Oh, I'm so excited because now I have my own media empire." And by that, she means she can create her own, like you were doing, Gerald, with your radio show, and like you're doing now, sort of. So she has a YouTube channel, and she uses social media as a as a media tool to promote her books. So that was very inspiring to me.
Well,
And
it's the First Amendment, and I would say use it or lose it. Let's
yeah,
have self-expression.
yeah.
I think we need more debate, not so much argument, but I would welcome people on this show who want to debate and kick things around. But let's jump back to our topic of why choose love.
And
And I'm interested in what you have to say about the idea of choice. How does choice enter into it, AG?
well, because you mentioned debate, some people would actually argue and say, I have a really good friend who he's a mentor to me, and he's a very open-minded and enlightened person. And when we first talked about my book, he said, "Why choose love? We are love." So, you know,
I think many of our listeners would agree, and that's
yeah,
why I think this
yeah,
is an interesting topic to explore, because
yeah.
I think you're coming at it from an intriguing direction.
Okay, so I think so. I totally agree. I feel like no matter what I see in the world, no matter what the news tell us, I strongly believe, and this is that kind of knowing that you just have. You don't need proof. It's just something that it's
That's
there.
faith.
That's faith. So and from the books I've read, and the my spiritual practice, I believe that all human beings. So I'm talking about human beings. I'm not talking about other species. I'm talking about human beings. Um, we are innately kind. We are innately generous. We are innately loving, because we are made. God made us. The Creator made us, and to me, the Creator is loving. The Creator is love. So if we are created by God to be like Him, then that's who we are. But when we come here on earth, and when we start living our lives, when we grow up, we kind of forget this thing, especially that in many situations, although parents do the best they can, they do the best they can with the knowledge they have, with the spiritual awareness they have. And oftentimes, since our early childhood, we learn that love is conditional, and we learn that love can hurt us, and we learn that we aren't good enough, and we learn that we to be accepted and loved, we can't be ourselves really. We need to get good grades, or we need to behave ourselves, or we need not to yell, or we have to eat everything that's on the plate and all that stuff. So I think we slowly forget our true nature, and we build a persona, we put on a mask, and we close our hearts. And then it comes a time, but I feel that still within ourselves there is this voice, the voice of our heart, the voice of our soul that says, hey, something is not right. And there is a point in our lives when that voice becomes so loud that then we need to make this choice first, that no matter what happens in our life, we are going to act from a place of love, not a place of fear, because all the choices we are making basically they are either driven by fear or by love. So we can choose to, in a situation, let's say someone cuts you off on the freeway, and the first impulse is reaction is to, oh, look at the jerk. So this would be like the fear, like, oh, something bad could have happened, or that kind of reaction. A reaction of love would be, while helping you to stay centered in your space, instead of getting all angry and rattling up your immune system, would be like, oh, maybe that person is in a hurry. Maybe something bad happened to him, to someone in his family, and he needs to get there fast. So let's send it person love. So that would be, and that choice in that situation, choosing love, first of all, it would put that person who is being cut off on the freeway, it would put that person in a way better space. It would take out all the anger and frustration of what's going on, instead of taking things personally, just trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes, or giving them the benefit of the doubt. Oh, maybe they're not bad people. Maybe they have a good reason to do that.
So
And
the choice is a kind of a reality check.
yeah.
It's a kind of a touch point, and keep coming back to get
Mhm.
dis,
So
a discipline, if you will,
yeah,
a
yeah,
daily
yeah,
discipline
yeah,
of keep reminding yourself. And if you keep reminding yourself, maybe the chances are you're going to be able to stay in that groove
yeah.
a little more often.
Yeah, and actually remember. And then, because our brain is so it's so easy to change, to remodel. So when somebody is in this permanent state of fear and anger and frustration, then the brain fires in a certain way. But then when you start to switch your emotions and kind of feed these positive emotions, then the brain will kind of rewire in a different way. And because everything in the universe is energy, is vibration, is frequency, based on your own frequency, on your own emotional state, you're going to attract different events, different people in your life that will match that frequency. So by choosing to stay in this state of love as much as you can, and I know it's hard even for me. I mean, there are days where I don't feel it, but most recently I am aware of my emotions, and when I feel that I'm not there, I just take a minute to ground myself and put a hand on my heart and come back to the real me. And then it's really magical what
Well, let
this
me let me
choice.
ask it. Let me ask it this way, okay? Because I'm getting a sense of where the choices is, where you think the choice can be.
Mm-hmm.
But let me ask it this way: do you think that love is primarily a radiation, or is it communication?
Uh,
Now, I'll apologize that it's a trick question, but I
no,
want to
no,
hear what
no,
you
no,
have
no.
to say.
No need to apologize. I think it's so hard to define love, and I'm not, and I'm answering your questions. I'm not trying to avoid it, but I just want to emphasize the fact that people, and that's what I write about also in my book. Love has been so misused, and we kind of mistaken love for all kind of stuff, like getting used to someone, or being infatuated with someone, or
Confusing longing with love or
yeah,
lust with
exactly.
love.
Physical attraction. So
Yeah.
that's not it. I mean, love, it's that kind of Christic love. Since you just celebrated Easter, and me as a Christian Orthodox, I'm celebrating Easter this weekend. But love is, as I said, is one of the highest. And if you look at the David R. Hawkins scale of consciousness, love is actually a state of consciousness, and it's one of the highest state of consciousness we can embody and experience here on earth. I think joy, and I was surprised to see that joy ranks is higher than love, but love is one of the highest according to David R. Hawkins. For those
Well,
who are
you just went where I was hoping you would go with this,
okay,
because
you in the right
my stealth behind this question was that if you think of love as radiation, if you
direction.
think of love as something that I'm glowing with, but also I might have someone I'm fixated on, okay, that I'm directing the love at as a beam,
Mhm,
but it's not really coming back,
mhm.
okay. In that case, I would say what we're dealing with may be, let's L word, longing, okay, because I do believe, and you and I have debated this before, and so I know you know, I know you've been down this road. I really do believe that all human interaction is to some degree, more or less, transactional.
Aha.
Now, transactional has become kind of a dirty word,
It
quid pro
is,
quo, with politics, but transaction simply means that there's communication. It means that there's love given and there's love received. Now, we know from our Sunday school lessons, let's say, that the best way to receive is to give. And I know that your books are full of that, you know. Um, but I would say that, and this is something that I'd shared. Actually, I shared this with Reverend Kevin once before. Is that even unconditional love, which, of course, we might say it's an ideal. It's We try, maybe we don't get there. We pray for guidance, whatever. But even unconditional love, when you think about it, if I'm your father and I love you unconditionally, maybe I'm not going to lose sleep tonight about what you do. Maybe I'm not going to worry so much about where you go. Now, I have to trust um, that you've been given the tools, you've been given the guidance to take care of yourself. But again, that type of parent, and you were talking about parenting before, which I think is very interesting. I was raised in a household which was my Southern Baptist household. My dad was a fairly strict fellow, but the thing was, if I misbehaved, he acted as though he withdrew his love.
Yeah, it happened to me, and I don't support this model.
Yes, yes,
Don't
and it
support
was like,
Yeah,
I'm angry with you. Guess you should know why.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and so then, you know, then my circle of friends widened to the point where I had Jewish friends who were used to expressing absolutely anything, anything, any issue that came into their mind would come out their mouth, and it was like, you were raised that way, and I thought that's so refreshing.
yeah. I want to say something. So to me, the love, as I mentioned earlier, love is such a deep concept. I don't think that our mind can really grasp what love really is. But I usually, and I write that in my book, and I don't like to use any adjective around love, because the love on David R. Hawkins' scale of consciousness, not any other type of love. That other type of love isn't love, but love is unconditional. Love is liberating, and is compassion. Love is compassion. It's interesting. I was at a festival, and I interviewed some people because I've been planning for a while to make a documentary about love, and I will make it. But I asked different people to say one word that they connect with love. And many people said compassionate, unconditional, liberating, so all that stuff. Um, where I'm going with that. And yeah, communication, because that's the other thing. Love always communicates, love is open, whereas fear is like sometimes, I want, because fear kind of puts us in a box and stops us from really communicating with other people. So uh, one of the most important things about love and being able to experience this love on this planet. So, one aspect is self love and filling our inner cup and staying connected to God, the source, all the time. Because that's where we get the love from. That's how we connect to this energy. And then we bring it within ourselves, we bring it in our hearts, we give it to ourselves first. And let's face it, if this earth, if people on this earth really love themselves, and this is not selfishness, this is not walking over, like dead bodies to get your will. No, it's really appreciating yourself for this great being you are, for the magnificence of your body, no matter how your body looks like. But it's a masterpiece, the way it functions and helps you experience this world. So showering yourself with this love and self-acceptance, and then you don't need to try and get it from other people, because it's already in there. So the more you have it in there, the more you bring it from the source, then the more you can spread it. And of course, because you are in this vibration and you don't need the love from somebody else, you are probably not going to be fixated on somebody else. But because you're in this state, you are going to attract someone who is in similar state, and together you will be able to give even more. That's my understanding, and that's my philosophy, and that's what I'm working now to embody in my life and to be.
Well, this
Yeah.
notion of self-love, like the discipline that I was talking about, the old-fashioned discipline,
Mhm.
if you will, is also a new thing to me. I did not encounter the idea of self-love as a therapeutic, as a self-discovery, as a honoring the self. Self-love, the way I was brought up, is selfishness.
Yeah. Well.
And of course, the bigger the family, the more you're
Yeah.
competing for the mashed potatoes at the dinner table and all like that. And so you can understand that as well. But the idea that we could love ourselves, if we could only love ourselves a fraction as much as the love that created us, as the love that we must be. And we get back to, we were on the show before, we were talking a bit about cosmology, and we were talking about because the Preacher series got into Big Bang and creation and all like that. And you may have heard this, AG, is that the theologian Ernest Holmes, that was about the 1930s, I think. So we're talking about someone who is cited these days as something of a new age practitioner, but Ernest Holmes would often, I was told, he would interrupt people at parties and tug on their sleeve and say, "Don't you think God is all that there is?"
Well,
And if indeed, and and this is the one of the questions about cosmology is, okay, what happened before the Big Bang? Well, if God created the universe out of itself, how could the universe be anything but suffused with
yeah,
that love, that so that's another way to come on to it.
yeah,
Well, this
very good.
more recent book, Open Your Heart, Rise in Love, perhaps you could tell us a bit about that, and then also how our audience can communicate with you and ask
Sure.
more questions.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. So my latest book is called Open Your Heart, Rise in Love. Um, Six Secret Doors to a Healthy and Happy Relationship.
Mhm.
When I wrote that book, I was in a relationship, like a two-year relationship. And while being in that relationship, I noticed something very interesting. I noticed that when I was in that loving state, when I was centered and balanced, his behavior mirrored mine, and the relationship went really smoothly and went really well. But when, for some reason I would be out of balance and I would start to be fearful or, angry, or then the relationship kind of mirrored that again. So I realized that actually, in general, in everything in our life, the best way to get what we want is to make the change within ourselves. So when we start transform ourselves to embody more of that higher frequency energy, more of that positive state of more of those positive emotions like gratitude, love, appreciation, joy, being grateful. We can, the same way we look around and we find reasons to be angry or upset or unhappy, the same way when we look around, I'm sure each one of us can find reasons to appreciate something, to be grateful for something, to love someone. So it's always a matter of choice and of focus. Where do we look? So I wrote this book to help couples who are, whether like in a long-term partnership or married, to kind of find their way back to each other, because sometimes people drift apart. And it is a book that I wrote mainly for women, to help them make their inner transformation and use tools such as faith and acceptance and self-love, and also connecting with the feminine energy and with other women with their tribe, and use the same tools then in the relationship. And instead of trying to tell the man, oh, you need to change, you need to do this, um, so I wrote the book to help them embody that transformation and bring that energy into the relationship and create a safe space for the men to be open, to be vulnerable, to for the men to feel appreciated and seen and accepted as he is. Because I think this is a big issue, because we don't accept ourselves as we are, then we project it on other people, and it's hard for us to accept other people as they are. Sorry. So that's the book. In it gives the tools for people who are together and who are still like there is love there, but the love isn't the way it used to be, to help them rekindle the love and actually bring them closer together in a more authentic relationship and a more open communication about each other.
Well, I haven't read that one yet. How would I get it?
So all my books are on Amazon.
Hmm.
These two books, and this is about toxic relationships. And by the way, even in a toxic relationship, there is a gift, because the toxic relationship shows you something that you know about yourself that needs some healing. So once you do that healing, then the relationship either gets better or you find the strength to walk out and find someone who really deserves you. So all these books are available on Amazon and other retailers, but I know everybody shops on Amazon, so that's the place to go. And you can find me as AG Bilik, the name on the screen. If you type it in AG Bilik, you'll find me on Amazon. And also my author website is www.agbilik.com. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, AG Billig Author. So I'm really passionate about photography. I love taking pictures. I love nature. So my Instagram is really colorful and uplifting.
You're very active on Instagram. I'm quite impressed by the and then also you seem to hop around to wonderful places.
Well, as you know, Gerald, we are both in California, and I think we are blessed. We are really blessed, and this has been a miracle for me. It's been my childhood dream to be able to live here in the United States, particularly California, and it's despite traffic and everything else. And by the way, I went today, and the gas price is down at Costco. So go now today if you need gas. But it's such a beautiful place to be. There are so many wonderful places, and I'm so fortunate that all the people I've met, and I didn't know anyone when I got here, are wonderful Americans who always made me feel like home. People like Gerald, whom I met at the LA Festival of Books, by the way. You were at the ayahuasca booth. That's how I met you. And then I said, oh, I need to
It's the
talk to
Independent Writers of Southern California.
them. Yes.
Plug.
But yeah, I'm really grateful for this country, for these people, and for God allowing me to be here and serve.
The door has swung open wide for you.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, AG. You've been very generous with your time and stimulating as always.
I hope so, yeah.
We'll look for you at the book fair, well, Los Angeles Times Festival of
Yeah, and I look for you.
over
I'll
the
see
weekend.
you tomorrow, Gerald. Thank you, and
Okay,
thank you,
wonderful.
everyone. Thank you for having me. God bless you.
I want to address now, I mean, as AG may be listening to us as she departs, but there is a book that I ran into years ago that fascinated me, and it turned out that it was not about what I thought it was going to be about. And that book is called The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides, Pulitzer Prize winning author. The Marriage Plot actually is a literary convention, and it's used to describe books going back at least as far as Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, where the main character is a young, attractive woman who is in somewhat poor circumstances, or at least not wealthy. And the plot of the book is she must make an honorable marriage, a high class marriage, before she's too old. Otherwise, she will become, quote unquote, a spinster. She will not be respected by high society. And if her family is really poor, she may end up with very few alternatives. She might have to go into prostitution or become a nun. Now, this sounds awfully extreme, but those were the stakes. And when Jeffrey Eugenides wrote Marriage Plot, he was asking whether that paradigm, whether that plot engine of needing to meet and marry the right guy, hopefully someone rich and highly placed in society, whether that plot even works anymore. And I would say, okay, the reaction among many modern people would be, of course, that's not how it works anymore. You know, we've got dual income couples, and we've got, you know, we've got a whole lot more social mobility for women as well as men, and that formula just doesn't work. And yet we have now we were talking about romance fiction in popular fiction. There's a very recent genre called billionaire romance. And this is not about a young man running around trying to find a billionaire woman. These are all about women, usually in Manhattan, trying to find a hedge fund manager, who's got 3 boats and a private plane. And yet you'll find that these books are incredibly popular. There was another one, which might be difficult to talk about, called 50 Shades of Grey, which was about sadomasochism. And there you're talking about not only billionaire romance, but you're talking about abusive romance. And yet there were quite a few of my women friends who I would think of as being liberated and feminist, who ate that book up. Now you can say, okay, that's fantasy escape, and that would be true of, all right, we've got books about warfare, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we want to engage in firefights with people, and and it does provide a certain amount of emotional release. But I do think that that's something to think about as to what role is literature playing in our lives and in the dialogues that we have with each other, and in the marriage plot. This modernist book that Jeffrey Eugenides wrote, it's actually about a love triangle among some college students, some very highly educated college students. And one of the main characters is the basic triangle. There are more characters, but the basic triangle is between an extremely bright young man who will become a biochemist and a very sensitive woman who's, I believe, majoring in literature, and a rather soft-spoken fellow who seems to be all heart, if you will. And one of the things that's really touching about that story is that the fellow that the woman seems to be most drawn to, the biochemist, the brilliant fellow, actually has some severe mental illness. He's got bipolar disorder, and he has to be on medication all the time. And he finds that if he doesn't take his medication, he will have these violent mood swings. And in one minute he'll think he's Superman. Another minute he'll think he's got no reason to live. And this character actually, in many ways, I think, knows himself better, knows his shortcomings better, is more in touch with his, let's say, the stories he tells himself about himself, or the lies he tells about himself. He knows himself better than the other fellow. And he actually, spoiler alert, but I mean, he does give up this woman before the end of the book because he feels as though he's the wrong choice for her. Now, also, in this discussion that I was having with AG that you were kindly eavesdropping on, she was talking about the idea of fear, and that fear often gets in the way of our being in touch with whatever love communications are occurring in our lives. One of the helpful things that I encountered in the, I'm kind of always attender at various, seminars, self-help, read the books, hear the lectures, participate in the games. But one of the really helpful pieces of advice I got, and I suppose maybe this is basic psychology, but I didn't know it, is that when you become angry, you're angry with someone, when you're feeling angry, resentful, upset, face flushed, maybe even flying into a rage with someone, the main reason that you're angry, this theory goes, the main reason that you're angry is that whatever this person is saying or claiming that you don't agree with is something that you fear at your deepest self. You fear that this is true of you. For example, if I were in an argument with someone and I were to fly into a rage, perhaps that someone said, Gerald, you're a fraud. You say one thing and you do another. You're not honest. You're a showbiz guy. Okay, you're about as phony as they come. Well, if I were worried about that, if I often stayed up at night worrying about whether I was truly honest, that could make me angry. But if I believed in myself or believed in my behavior, in my lessons learned, that I'm aware of those temptations, I'm aware that I could be that way, but I kind of don't think I am. That's not going to upset me. That's not going to upset me. The same way if someone were to accuse me of being, geeky and too tall. I was always the shortest kid in my class, still am. Okay. I'm not. Now, if somebody calls me short, I might get, you shrimp, I might get kind of upset.
Hey, Gerald.
But, if they said, what, why did you miss the basketball team? You're 7 feet tall. Again, I'm not going to be upset because I just know that that's not me.
Hey, Gerald.
So the lesson of this psychological coaching was, if you find yourself upset, be aware of what's occurring in this communication that you might fear. What is that element of fear? What do I fear about myself? And then uncouple from your anger, uncouple from your emotion. And you will find yourself taking a deep breath. You will find yourself taking a deep breath.
Hey, Gerald.
You may, yes.
I
It's the voice of Reverend Kevin.
Yeah, I want you to meet Gary R. Lindbergh. And he's here, and one of
we have a popping guest.
Yeah, and you know what? I just felt led to have you two just kind of chat a little bit, just to get to know each other. You don't have to get into any specifics or anything like that, but I really wanted you to meet him, and he is here, and I am just going to allow him to come on and allow you guys an extra 15 minutes or so to just get to know each other, conversate, and we'll make plans to have him on your show sometime soon. Okay?
That's a wonderful invitation. Hello, Gary.
Hello, Gerald. How are you?
I'm very well. I have been discussing and fussing over questions of cosmology and theology, especially in relation to some of the books that I've done. So I see that you're writing on that subject.
Thank you. I'm honored to look at it.
Well, as Kevin has suggested, I think we should just we'll tee it up so that at your return about those kinds of things, and we can get into it.
Okay, that sounds great. I love that.
one of the things that I have encountered recently that is really mind spinning. There is a, I don't know whether you'd call it a theory. There's a mindset in physics and astrophysics these days that's talking about self-organizing systems. And if you carry that to the extreme, that's the so-called godless universe. In other words, let's try to understand how complex structures could evolve. And yet, I run into this fellow. He's not alive. He died. He also is a very, very accomplished or shall we call it, dare we call it divine engineering?
Oh.
So I'd love to share some of those thoughts with you as well.
Thank you. I would love to share my thoughts also, and share the idea that science actually proves the existence of God.
Well, to be fair to our scientists out there, those who actually don't live in parallel universes and actually all practicing, Catholic, Muslim, Baptist, whatever. I mean, there are also those, and I suppose on some days I suppose I'm that way, is that I've got two sets of I just got two sets of beliefs. But I think an objective scientist will just simply say, well, we don't know. If you don't have a testable hypothesis about it, then they just won't comment on it. I mean, they're not going to insist there isn't a God. They're just going to say, we don't know.
Well, some of them do insist there is no God, such as Stephen Hawking. He said very bluntly, there is no God. And
well,
I
actually,
attribute
I think later, I could be wrong. But
I think it was later that he said it, not later that he amended it. Although, I don't know. I haven't followed him that closely.
Well, he also said we're in ancient writings, the angel Gabriel, whatever. Those aliens that are coming may be the ones that we're supposed to pay attention to.
Well, I don't know about aliens, but I know that recently I went to the doctor and he was talking about how wonderful the human body was and how much of a really a miracle it is. And he said it just occurred to him that it's not possible that it was just simply created by accident or simply evolution by random. And it just doesn't make sense. And I've heard astronauts. My brother was an aeronautical engineer at Marshall Space Center in Huntsville, Alabama, and he told me about astronauts that go up in space, and they would come back and say the world is so marvelous, and to look at the Earth from millions of miles away, you can't say that wasn't a creation by a superior being. It just doesn't make sense.
That's certainly a life-changing experience. I've been told is the people who've been up there, they're not the same people when they come back. Sure.
There you go. I think the thing is that some scientists will claim that you can't prove anything, but I would suggest that the sciences itself are proof, and it's a matter of connecting the dots. I listened to a little bit of what you were saying earlier, and you were mentioning the Big Bang. Well, the Big Bang is supposedly an explosion, but how was there an explosion? Something doesn't decide, well, this afternoon, I have nothing better to do, so I'm going to explode. And so, I mean, there has to be a cause. If there's a cause, that's what science is all about. There's a cause and effect for everything. And if there's a cause and effect for for diseases, for this malady, or this car accident, or work accident, or things like that I've dealt with before. There's got to be a cause for even the initial Big Bang. Who caused the Big Bang?
And God said, have a lot of meaning, but it's like they can get it back this close.
Yeah, they're close, but they don't get it right at the point. And
right. And I think that
the problem.
The latest thinking is that actually physics was created in that moment. In other words, before that, the actual laws of the universe didn't come into existence until at some point, because, and I think it's wonderful to think of physical laws as being that's a synonym for God's will. It's got to be, because that's the way the universe He created works. If it's a matter of operating outside of that, you'd have to be in a different universe.
Well, I think the thing that, scientists are just normal people, just like you and I. And they make mistakes just like you and I. And the point is, I'm sure they would. My criticism of the scientists is that they do not connect the dots. In other words, Paul Davies, one of the writers I studied, was pointing out several different theories about how life was created on Earth. And one of the ideas was there was a watery area that a microbe suddenly appeared and well, you got to ask the question and answer the question: how did the microbe get started in the first place? How did the Big Bang start in the first place? And Professor Bonting, a Dutch scientist, was saying, how can you have an explosion, the Big Bang, if there's nothing to explode? And if you have an explosion, that is a destructive act. That's not a constructive act. It's a destructive act to destroy things. And so the purpose of science is to connect the dots, not to just make a statement. And, when I was going to Cal, that's the University of California, Berkeley, there was a big hullabaloo about publish or perish. The professors had to publish something all the time because they had to be a big name and get notoriety or reputation, if you will. And so there was a pressure on trying to come up with something new. Well, that's kind of what scientists do. And when I was writing in my major in history, I had to write a senior paper about some event in history, and I had to come up with something new. And so I came up with my idea about socialism in Berkeley in the 1920s. And when I did my master's thesis, I also had to come up with another idea that was unique. And so I studied Frederick Herzberg and his hierarchy or his motivation hygiene theory, and Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. And so I kind of did about a dozen interviews with local businesses and their human resources people, and came up with my theory and about what companies were using job enrichment for and specifically in my case. And so this pressure to create something new, to be unique in offering what they're doing, is something, a pressure that's on scientists too. And it's important for them to connect the dots. My criticism of science is that they take a little bit too much liberty and do not connect the dots, and they're a little sloppy in some of their comments. I believe that science is very valid. I believe evolution occurs, but it's not necessarily the way that these people would like to think it is. And scientists have got to be honest. If they can prove the Big Bang occurred, then they should prove it. If they can prove that the microbe created life in a watery substance on Earth, they should prove it, not claim it. Claiming it is not what scientists are supposed to be doing, as I see it. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that science is a matter of constant cause and effect, and they're there to identify what happened and how it happened and why it happened, or what caused it. So those things are part of the process of science. And so they can't just say, well, I feel that should have happened in 13 billion years ago or whatever it was. So for them to face the truth. And Jesus himself said, seek ye the truth and it'll set you free. And then Isaiah, the my ways are your ways are different than your ways, and we're as far. My thoughts are as far away from you as heaven is from you, and that kind of stuff. But that's the point about having science offer us what is really the truth, not their their tangent ideas or whatever.
The process of science is that a scientific theory will last only as long as someone doesn't refute it with better evidence, or the whole idea is there should be researchers in other parts of the world who can take your experiment, your thesis, to the same result.
Exactly right, and that's what.
And one of the reasons that the Nobel Prize often gets awarded to 3 different people in the same year is they've all been working on the same thing independently, and they've come. It's at that point of agreement. I would recommend that Morowitz book to you, The Emergence of Everything. His specialty is biochemistry and how you get from molecules to organisms. Now, I will say I had to skim that chapter because I'm not really much of a biochemist. I play one on TV, but it's fascinating. And the other thing, when we're talking about these gaps for we call it divine engineering to break through, is one of the things that Morowitz points out is there's this principle, the Pauli exclusion principle. And that simply says that 2 electrons cannot occupy the same orbit around the same nucleus at the same time. And thinking, well, that sounds kind of basic, no big deal. What? But actually, because of that rule, because of that law, because of that God's law, it makes all of molecular chemistry possible, because as molecules are cooked inside stars, because we're second or third generation molecules. We're several star systems would have to have exploded and cooked stuff for billions of years for our molecules to exist, because stars start out as just hydrogen. And there's 100 elements in the periodic table, something like that. So that's to get more and more complex molecules, you got to do more and more cooking. Takes long time.
I just want to.
We'll go there.
I just want to step in.
Kevin wants to cut us off.
No, actually.
He wants to say amen. As he always
amen.
says.
Amen.
Amen. That's it. That's right.
Actually, I am really enjoying this, and I wanna be sure how long you guys would like to talk, because you are live, and if you want to go until 5:30, 6 o'clock, it's okay. But I need to find out. I need to find out so I can make the necessary arrangements. So, are we going to end here, or as a matter of fact, I want you guys to connect, set up a day that you two could come on and he be a guest on your show, Gerald, and go from there. I really, really appreciate you, Gary, stopping by, spare the moment, and having this chat with Gerald. I am so honored that you two finally had an opportunity to basically see each other face to face and have this little discussion. But yeah, we're gonna set it up to where you guys could do it officially. We can talk about it soon. But I'm gonna go ahead and get back to regular programming. I do have a program coming up shortly, but I'm gonna say thank you to Gerald for being so open to allow Gary to come in, and I'm gonna say thank you to Gary for accepting to come on and have this little chat. So until next time, I want you both to have a fantabulous rest of your afternoon. Both of you be blessed. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and you all have a great day, okay?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
And
best to you too. Have a nice day.
Look forward to it.
God bless you both.
Thank you.